Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is August 2nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. and glad to be returning to our council chambers for the first time in well over a year. So glad to have everybody here and welcome. And thank you for observing the mask policy for us too. Tonight we have a series of meetings. The first one will be that we'll be having several committee meetings, and that will be followed by a regular session of council where we will be reading some ordinances and hearing reports. It will be followed by an executive committee session, and at which point we will come back and convene, open the doors again, and then adjourn for the evening. So a long evening, a full evening ahead of us, and we're looking forward to the conversation and discussion. The first committee is the transportation, and that is chaired by Councilmember Reisner and joined by Council Members Crowell and Ziff.
Waiting for the migration to end here. I'd like to call the Transportation Committee to order. We just have two items to discuss tonight in committee, and then these items will later be brought up again in our City Council meeting proper as a first reading. So we'll read the proposed ordinances that's listed here, and then I'll open it up for any questions or comments from members of the Transportation Committee. And after they've had their say, then I will open it up to other members of council. And after they have their say, then to city officials and to anyone in the audience who may have something pertinent to say about it. So the first item is Ohio University Involvement Fair street closing. And there is an ordinance proposed which would read, an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street on Sunday, August 22nd, 2021 for Ohio University's Involvement Fair and declaring an emergency. Whereas a request has been received from Ohio University Campus Involvement Center to close a portion of Union Street, and whereas the College Green is not large enough to highlight all of Ohio's involvement opportunities, serving approximately 500 student organizations and hosting between 4,000 to 5,000 students, and whereas the Involvement Center was just given approval 2 weeks ago to hold the event, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the mayor and Service Safety Director shall implement the following. A, close to vehicular traffic Union Street in the City of Athens from Court to College on Sunday, August 22nd, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. for Ohio University Involvement Fair. B, ban parking on Union Street from Court to College in the City of Athens on Sunday, August 22nd, 2021 from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for said event. C, vending spaces will remain open and accessible for city licensed vendors throughout the event. And then section 2, the usual emergency, health and safety, so on, so on. So that's what we have on our agenda. So I'd like to open it up to members of the committee to make any comments or suggestions or alterations or whatever they'd like to say. Member Crowell?
I'm in support of supporting the university for this initiative, and I know we've tried to get our closures all together in one ordinance at the beginning of the year, but I think we all foresaw that these kinds of things would happen, so I'm in support.
Member Ziff?
Pretty much exactly what he just said. I think he said it better than I would.
No, not necessarily. Members of council? Comments, suggestions, alterations? Okay. Mr. Mayor, anything to add to this?
I'll be brief. As Councilmember Crowell indicated, that, that we do try to put forward a full slate for council to approve with all events, and we may have overlooked reaching out to the department that puts this on each year. But in following years, moving into 2022, we will make sure we are able to contact all event coordinators or event organizers for our street closings and make sure we, again, get before council what really worked well this year, a complete slate for all the closings and of the 3 different types if needed: suspending the noise ordinance, suspending, closing down the street,
Right.
yeah,
Vending and so on.
and so on.
Councilmember Reisner?
Member Nisley.
I'm not sure if there's somebody from Ohio University from the Student Services. Is there anybody here representing the university that wishes to speak on the proposed ordinance? We just wanted to make sure because they said somebody was going to be here representing the university. Okay, thank you.
City Service Safety Director, do you have anything to add? Is there any issues with this?
There are no issues with this request included.
Okay. Well, that takes care of that point. So let's move right on. The second point is street paving, alternative funding. And there is a proposed ordinance which reads as an ordinance amending ordinance 37-21 authorizing the 2021 street paving and repairs project number 337. Be it ordained by the council of the city of Athens, Ohio, section 1, section 2 of ordinance 37-21 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 2, the 2021 appropriation ordinance 140-20 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums. $50,000 is struck out and substituted with $81,500 to Street Fund 2021 TC 500 to include crack sealing, $233,000 to APR Income Tax Fund 273 TC 500 for paving / parking lot construction at West State Park, and $281,500 to Street Rehabilitation Fund 572, Transaction Code 500, to include restoration of the East State Street concrete median near Bob Evans and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 2 reads, Section 3 of Ordinance 3721 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $300,000. Let me stand corrected on that. It's $596,000 as follows. $81,500 to Street Fund 220, Transaction Code 500, $233,000 to APR Income Tax Fund 273, Transaction Code 500 for paving parking lot construction at West State Park, and $281,500 from Street Rehabilitation Fund 572, Transaction Code 500 for said paving and repairs. And then Section 3, this ordinance shall go in full force upon earliest permitted by law. So I'll open it up to the committee. Any comments? Yes, Member Zett?
Thank you. I personally I really like to see some of our funds getting diverted to help repaving the West State Street ball field parks, all of that. It's fallen into a considerable state of disrepair just because it's been a while since it's been looked at. And with the number of people that have been going there parking for games and having to pull onto the grass, and so I think this is a really, really great use of our funds to be actually revitalizing a small part of the west side, which I know, sometimes feels like it gets overlooked. So, big fan.
Thank you. Member Crowe?
Thank you, Member Reisner. I'll just put in a plug. A group of local citizens have been bringing up the issue of other recreational activities in the city of Athens, in particular the soccer community. And so they have approached me as a interested council member to discuss seeing some of these funds going towards other facilities. And I'm not saying this doesn't deserve to be done at the West State Street parks, as Member Ziff has supported. But I do think in the coming years, we need to look at some of the other sports in the city of Athens. Thank you, Member Reisner.
Thank you. Member Smedley?
Thank you, Member Reisner. With regard to the paving at West State Street Ballpark, could you share, if you know, if this is repaving and expansion, or is just repaving? And I see the mayor nodding, so maybe he could elaborate and just maybe talk a little bit about more about the expansion, what brought this on, and how many more spots it'll provide, and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Take it away, Mayor.
Okay, well, let me tell you a story. No, this past summer, my daughters were both on the Sandlot softball team playing, and it's the first time I've really had the ability to, or the opportunity rather, to observe the parking that takes place when Sandlot is in full stride, and with the girls softball down there as well. And one of the things I noticed right away is that there was an awful lot of parking on the grass itself. And so it would be, to answer your question, it will be repaving the existing parking and expanding to create roughly 80 more parking spaces down there, because it is desperately needed. Otherwise, like I said, we'd have to figure out some other plan. And I don't think any other plan to protect the grass spaces would necessarily work, other than to create more parking, which is needed down there at West State Street ball fields. And if I may, real quick, to comment on Member Crowell's mention, absolutely. You know, we're not a one-sport town, and there are a lot of users, to include pickleball and tennis and other things. So absolutely, that we're tracking that there needs to be improvements to a number of our recreation spaces in the city of Athens. And that's been my tenet since I became mayor. It will continue to be something that I charge forward, to where we're looking at other spaces. But Member Smedley, and there'll be also conversation, I'm sure, about ball field 1 and 2's dugouts that are in desperate need of rehabbing and bringing up to the condition that they should be in. I think not only West State Street Park, Member Crowell, but again, West State Street Park was one of the assets of the city that, when we were trying to get the levy through, certainly we knew that there was a lot of repairs that had to be made, that had been deferred maintenance down at West State Street ball fields, and so we will do that.
Thank you. And just to add an additional comment, I am in support, obviously, of seeing some additional investment on the west side, given that's my ward. And it was identified in the comprehensive plan that the West State Street Ballpark needed some revitalization. And I'm hopeful to see other things identified, such as the restrooms and concession stand and that sort of thing. The previous director of Arts, Parks and Rec, or maybe acting, I don't know, had mentioned there'd be a possible comprehensive plan on the parks specifically. I don't know where that stands, but it would be nice to see some sort of plan itself related to the park, so we can get some community engagement to see what else that we can do in some of those unused spaces, underutilized spaces at the West State Street Ballpark. But I'm happy to see this going through, so thanks.
Member Falk?
I think that it should be reminded for people that this is the wellhead protection plan area. This is where our wellhead, many of our wellheads are. I think that we need to be very careful in doing things that can affect the flow and the absorption of various runoff in the area, because we have a single source aquifer that is very, very vulnerable to pollution. And so I think that needs to go forward in looking at how you do the paving, where the paving is, the runoff diversion that you have to put in order to protect both the river, which is an aquifer recharge area, and our wellheads. And so I would like for discussion of that sort of stuff to go on before the paving occurs. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Micah.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could comment, or if anyone could comment on how these allocations might contribute to or even accelerate the Complete Streets plan.
I can't comment on, but perhaps the administration can?
Well, I can't say that the paving is necessarily going to complement, for parking, the complete street concept, but, without getting into the weeds, with the West Union designing that's going on, and hopefully being able to have a connector that connects Harold Drive between West Union and West State Street. That, when it's being designed, we are looking at, multimodal transportation to get through, to include sidewalks, because we know there's a lot of young individuals who, while using the ball fields, will also frequent one of our classic restaurants on West Union, and to create a safe passage for that as well as cycling. So we will be looking at more of a active transportation, complete street design on that, but not so much for this parking plan.
Right. I was thinking less the parking, but the allocations that are going to street repairs.
To street repairs?
Oh, I was thinking that some of these funds would be helping to fix paving on streets, but if I'm mistaken, please let me know.
I can speak to it.
Sure. Director Stone?
Sure. Just to, this whole chair thing is. All right. Annual paving typically is a maintenance and repair of existing. And so, it's something that we've done for decades now, where we'll put a significant amount of money in an annual basis on repaving, crack sealing. Oftentimes, if there's curb or storm infrastructure that needs repaired in its existing condition to get back to a viable state, that's really what we do with that annual paving. There are no grant funds that go into annual paving. One of the benefits of having a street rehab fund, specifically as an additional levy on top of our normal income tax, is that we get a sizable amount of money for a city this size to be able to go and do those annual repairs. And because we don't have grants associated with it, there's a lot of flexibility with that. And so we'll use those on any given year to do those rehabs that we need to do that come up kind of through the year, and as we evaluate both pavement, curb, sidewalk, and infrastructure conditions over time. We tend to modify existing streets to be more complete in accordance with the Complete Streets Initiative as part of other capital improvements projects. In many cases when we have external funding for it. So if you look at Richland Avenue and improvements on Richland Avenue really over the last 10 years, starting with the roundabout in 2010, all the way up through the present day, you can kind of see with time, we've added bike lanes, we've added wider sidewalks, we've added we did a great separation here with this most recent project. So those tend to be the times that we do the Complete Streets initiatives, like the big Complete Streets initiative. The Stimson project, for instance, right now has a significant Complete Streets component. But it's typically not part of annual paving, because annual paving we're trying to fix what we got. Yeah. So that extra funds in here this year is the crack sealing. My guess is that concrete additional appropriation, I don't have all the details on that one, I'll have to get it. With that East State median is probably due to a bid coming in higher than what we initially thought. But by and large, we really go after those Complete Streets initiatives as part of some of these other projects.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Madam President?
Just a comment and a question. There was one time, and Andy, you would be, or Director Stone, you would be here and know about it, was the paving the bike lane on North Congress. Did that go in as part of was that kind of we see an opportunity here?
That was a low-hanging fruit situation where we basically made the determination we didn't need 2 driving lanes on North Congress any longer. It was an area identified. To go way back, it was identified on the cycle path map of which is a local bike store here in the city, map of good and bad cycling thoroughfares in the city of Athens, and it had been identified as a bad one. And so we recognized that we didn't need 2 lanes of drive traffic, because volumes weren't what they used to be on that street. And so we got rid of 1 lane and then restriped after annual paving to be able to put in a bike lane on that one.
And
So that is an example.
That worked really well. And I've got one other question, and this is in response to Councilmember Falls, which I think is a really valid comment about the taking a look at the West State Street and the design of that before the paving starts. Tonight's the first reading of that ordinance, so my question to administration is, before that comes back for the second reading, do you think there'll be time then for the review that Councilmember Fall has asked about?
We can look into that, for the design for drainage in that area. The interesting thing, and we've had this conversation in the past, is that in observing the number of cars that are parking on the grass, I see that as more of a risk when it comes to our wellhead protection, as opposed to asphalt parking spaces, to where any random dripping from someone's engine or potentially gas tank is going onto the asphalt surface. But we'll certainly look into proper drainage down there. It's interesting, the drainage that currently exists, there is a drainage ditch that runs through the park near the existing parking area, but we can look at other ways of protecting the wellhead protection area.
Thank you.
Member Crowe?
Thank you. I wanted to appreciate Member McCary's bringing up the complete streets, because I know you weren't on council at that time, and I was involved in that initiative, and I wasn't thinking about complete streets for this project. So I really appreciate you bringing that to mind. It is true, as Mr. Stone and the mayor have said, is that we do tend to look at accessibility issues, safety issues, bicycle infrastructure, and so for a parking lot, there's fewer of those. But they're not. It doesn't mean that they don't exist, especially the safety features, and so, or how somebody is getting from an expanded parking lot to their baseball field safely. And I'm sure that the city administration will look into that, but I really appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Member Ziff?
Thank you. I just had a question about the restoration of the East State Street concrete median near Bob Evans. Is that referring to the flower bed area in the center there? Is it like a redesign, or is it just sort of revitalizing what's there?
No, I believe it's repair, because a lot of that curb, as you may have noticed, is failing. It's been there for quite some time, and it's starting to crumble, and so it'll be to repair it, not a redesign.
Yeah. I think that's just to add on to that, I think that's a very nice thing for us to invest something into, with the number of people visiting Athens coming from places like Columbus. That's their first view of the city of Athens, and ideally we don't want to welcome to our overall quite beautiful city with, look, here's our crumbling stuff. So it's definitely a great use of that as well. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I would just like to make sure it's real clear to anyone who's watching tonight, the parking for West State Street Park, the parking will come out of 273, which is out of recreation, and everything else that we were just talking about will be 220 out of street.
Any other comments for that? Please state your name and address for the record.
First time I've done this in a long time. I'm Rob Delac, 124 Morris Avenue in the city here in Athens. I'm not representing any particular groups or anything right now. Thanks for the discussion about complete streets in particular, and for Member McCary for bringing that up. You hit, I think, most of the points, but I would like to add just a little in that I always keep an eye on what the city is doing with the paving, and I review every street that's proposed and see if there was an opportunity to maybe remind city staff, if needed, that there might be an opportunity to sort of that low-hanging fruit, like Andy Stone mentioned, to maybe put a bike lane in where the comprehensive plan, the bike ped plan, shows there should be one, and there isn't currently, and maybe to add it during the paving process. So I've been keeping an eye on that for several years now, and I checked this year, and there were no opportunities with the paving that's proposed to do that. So there has been in the past, one was West Union Street a few years ago was repaved. And I had suggested that should be bike lanes put on that, which is what was in the plan. They decided not to do that because there was a plan to rebuild the entire street, which is going to happen, I think, next year now. So they put that off for that reason. But they do seem to be considering those ideas, and but I like to keep an eye on that myself, being an advocate for complete streets here in the city and active transportation. The other thing just to mention about the other topic that came up here was the additional paving for the parking at West Street Park. I'm a little concerned about the addition of new paving. I sort of think, and the mayor did address the idea that if we use grass, there may be concerns as well. But I think using flex space with grass instead of more impervious surface might be a better option. But also, you know, I do think it's important that we consider carefully adding new pavement in the wellhead area, like Member Fall had suggested. And I wonder also if the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has reviewed that proposal and if they've provided any feedback on that. I've heard from one member that this was happening, but I don't know if that was something that the board actually reviewed and provided advice to the city on. Does anyone know? Mayor Patterson, do you know if?
I do not know whether they have or not.
So it would seem like that would make sense to hear what the Parks and Recreation Citizen Advisory Board had to say about that, and I don't know if they made an official, any official decision or input to the city about that proposal to add parking. But I think that would be important to consider as well, if it hasn't been considered, is what that committee thinks should happen here. So maybe it's a little premature to have that in this proposal, although I guess it could go forward with the readings and we can still adjust later if necessary. So, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think we pretty much beat this to death. There's no other bullet points to consider, so with that, I'll say the Transportation Committee is adjourned.
Thanks, Councilmember Reisner. We'll now have Finance and Personnel Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Councilmembers Reisner and Smedley.
Thank you, President Leslie. I'll give members a moment to resettle themselves. And we have a couple of items on Finance and Personnel tonight. The first are some appropriations. We would like to appropriate $5,000 from the Athens Arts, Parks, and Recreation Fund 270 for the Shade Tree Commission. These are for some, both the planting and the maintenance of trees down at the West State Street ball field. So this will be a chance to enhance that area with the other improvements going on. There are two locations, actually, that the Shade Tree Commission has recommended planting some trees, not only down at the West State Street ball fields, but also on Carroll Lane, Carroll Road. The city will plant and maintain those trees on Carroll Road, while the Shade Tree Commission will handle the ones at the West State Street ball fields. That's the first item under appropriations tonight. Yes, Councilmember Smedley.
Thank you, Member Kraut. It's odd to hear my echo. Getting used to this. So, and I'm looking at the map here that shows where the large existing trees are, the medium existing trees are, and where the new plantings are going to go. And I just try to do a quick rough count. It looks like maybe there's 20 or so new trees going, or more-ish. Do you have that count off the top of your head by any chance, or of the new trees going in?
I don't. I believe it's 20, somewhere between 23 and 26 new trees down at West State Street ball fields to complement the additional parking. And then it would be 4 trees up on Carroll.
It shows 26 on the map here.
26, okay, thank you. And just curious, do we know what type of trees? Just kind of get an idea of what that will look like down the line when they mature.
There were recommended trees. Again, off the top of my head, I don't recall what native species they were of trees, but it would be trees that complement the native trees in Ohio.
Cool.
They have to be 75% native species, as per the landscape ordinance that was just updated.
Correct. Thank you, Member Fall. I'm also seeing on the map expected future construction area. I wondered if you had any, and I know that's not something we're voting on tonight. I wonder if that was something else for the future or no.
That's in there, the language
just on the map
associated with the
itself.
trees. That would be the parking area, I believe, that you're looking at, if it's West State
That's
Street.
just
Park.
got it to the expanded
Yeah.
parking.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Member Smedley, I can tell you that the Shade Tree Commission recommends a mix of 3 species from the following list for West State Street: oak, sycamore, tulip poplar, catalpa? I'm not familiar with the catalpa. Hackberry, Kentucky coffee tree, and thornless honey locust.
That sounds like a nice
And-
collection. Thank you.
Yes, and on Carroll Road, I believe 2 tulip poplar or magnolia. Both will be flowering. And they also recommend considering some hazelnuts, sweet shrub, and or coral berry in between the trees, so that the city doesn't have to mow around the trees. Thought that was a good suggestion. Less mowing, right, Member Fall?
Thank you, Member.
Thank you.
Yes, Member Reisner?
Along with all this planting of trees, any thoughts been given to things like putting in the appropriate plants for pollinators, bees, butterflies, monarchs, that sort of thing?
With this, the answer is no, but
Mm-hmm.
we have been identified and recognized as a Bee City USA now. So it's certainly something that we could be looking into, Member Reisner.
Yeah, I'd like to see that up on Carroll for some reason.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment, the area that I'm looking at on Carroll, is that what's fondly referred to as Goat Path Park?
I believe so.
Okay, well, that's,
It's 10 acres of land that was gifted to the city
Yes.
many years ago.
mm-hmm,
There is a small stretch that does have frontage on Carroll Road.
right. A lot of that is gravel, by the way, in case no one knows.
Okay,
So it's gonna take some digging.
good drainage.
Thank you.
Any other, from the rest of council, any questions about the shade tree appropriation? Okay. Seeing no other comments, we will move on to the next item under appropriations, which is that our treasurer's scanner has gone kaput. So we will be appropriating, or we recommend appropriating from the general fund, $400 to the treasurer's office for a new scanner. Committee, any questions about the treasurer's scanner? Other members of council? Okay, seeing none. Going on to transfers. Our garbage fund is struggling. We know that the,
It's always,
have a good look at about a year of having our new contract, and the garbage fund balance is not balancing. So the discussion item tonight is a transfer of $150,000 from the general fund to the garbage fund. And before I ask for any committee input, I don't know if the mayor has any additional information. I don't know if Mr. Riggs was able to join us tonight, or...
No, clearly he's not here. But I will add that I believe what's also included in that appropriation is something that we were not, that we were unaware of, at least in terms of the monetary amount to have Big Belly, if we chose to discontinue our contract with Big Belly, which is where we're headed, that there is a cost associated with removing the Big Bellies, which is certainly another piece of this equation as we're looking at this transfer. And we will certainly have to have the conversation of our rates with the garbage fund as well at some point.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll remind the public that the Big Bellies are the solar-powered trash and recycling receptacles that are in the downtown area, 26 pairs, I believe.
I
Mayor?
believe that's correct.
And the city pays approximately $50-some thousand a year to rent those. And for some time now, we've been looking at the end of this contract to decide whether we wanted to continue that contract or perhaps discontinue the contract and have our own receptacles. One of the advantages to having the Big Bellies is that they actually have a compactor that is run through solar power, so they're very sustainable devices. What that compacting means is that you can have fewer pickups of the actual trash and recycling, or I think it's really just the trash maybe that has the compaction. But our contract with AHRC has them pick up every day. So it doesn't work perfectly well with the way that that we have our receptacles in the downtown area. And we looked at it over a long term, not having that $50,000+ rental fee annually. There are, as the mayor said, some costs that we're going to have to absorb. We're going to need to buy our own receptacles, and we are going to need to pay this fee that's in the contract to the Big Belly company to actually collect all of these devices. But even when we looked at the numbers and crunched the numbers, obviously going down the road, we will save money in the long term. So, Mayor, do you want to add something?
I do, thank you, you explained that very well. You know, the other thing that's worth noting about us using Big Belly Uptown is it gave us real data. It showed what would it look like with having both a refuse side as well as the recycling side, and we were averaging between 35 and 40% diversion. Otherwise, everything would have gone to landfill with the recycling side. So when we do replace them, we will continue with a dual trash can system to where it's side by side landfill versus recycling, because I believe a lot of people have really gotten used to and have been clearly using it, since we are diverting 40% that would have otherwise gone to the landfill. So we've learned a lot with the Big Belly system, but at this point we find that it's more cost effective for us to use a dual system in the Uptown, and we also believe that with that savings we may be able to have some other things, be able to possibly hire an individual seasonally, or maybe full-time, a part-time individual to go and kind of monitor any other litter that we see in the Uptown area, because that's basically where we do see the lion's share of littering is in the Uptown area. Although the Big Bellies have been well used.
Thank you, Mayor, and I believe, yes, Member Reisner.
Okay, just so I get it straight in my head, this general fund transfer to garbage fund, that's the $150,000 to general fund transaction code 600? Is that what we're asking?
Yes.
Okay. And that $150,000 is for what exactly? It's, when you say garbage, I think of Athens Hawking Recycling picking things up. We're not talking about giving them more money, are we?
I can speak to it.
Yes.
So it's about half and half. About half of it is the cost of the removal of Big Belly receptacles uptown.
Okay.
About half of it is to shore up the garbage fund, because the amount of revenue that is coming into the garbage fund is not keeping pace with the amount of expenditures going to Athens Hawking Recycling. So it doesn't change their contract, but if you look at what we brought into the city versus what we committed when we recommitted to Athens Hawking Recycling contract a year ago, we haven't brought in enough to pay for the contract. So it's not good practice to subsidize a proprietary fund with a general fund, but in this particular instance, you can't just instantly go out and raise the rates and get all the money you need to be able to pay it back. So this is it's about half and half what these what this particular emergency or subsidization is going to.
Is this COVID related in any way? I mean, loss of revenues and so on, causing an impact?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly. I haven't done a deep dive. I know that David Riggs has. He's got some recommendations on what rates need to be in order to keep pace with the costs associated with the Athens Hawking Recycling contract.
Right. Yeah, but when we signed before we signed the contract, there was a very detailed study before and we changed rates to make sure that this wouldn't happen. So I'm wondering where, on the spreadsheet, was there a miscalculation?
It could be that there's less ratepayers at this point. I mean, I've been gone for 17 months, so when I remember.
Oh, by the way, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, when I went away, I think we thought we were close on the math. In the meantime, it's possible that there's been a decrease in users, and the amount that has been paid into the fund didn't keep pace with the amount that we committed to Athens Hockey Recycling, and
Right.
and so we're gonna.
Well, I see sort of a cause and effect here. You leave and we go bust. So, would you like to speak to that?
No. It's. I'm sure so much stuff was better when I was.
Okay, that satisfied my questions.
And to the big belly point also that the mayor talked about, you know, it was worth a shot, right? You know, the big bellies were, the initial thought was because they compacted that we would partially pay for the cost associated with renting them by not having to make as many runs in the uptown area. And you know, every time they make a run in the uptown area, there's a cost that Athens Hockey and Recycling charges to the city. And so we thought, you know, it's compacted, they won't have to make as many runs, and so therefore they'll help pay for themselves. Well, it didn't happen. They still had to make as many runs because people put stuff in there and it compacted and got full, and they had to run every day anyway. To the mayor's point about diverting of recycling, it absolutely encouraged people to do that because both receptacles were present. So that was one benefit while they were there. And then the other benefit was they quit being locations for second-story and third-story apartments to bring their bagged trash down to the street and go into the open street receptacles because you couldn't fit them into the thing there. So when we go with the new ones, that's, you know, obviously something that we're going to continue to do. So there were a lot of benefits from them, but it just didn't pan out financially the way that we wanted to, or that we were hoping from the beginning. So time to take them out.
To Director Stone's point, you know, I have yet to see a lazy boy chair hanging out of one of the big bellies
Yeah.
because he couldn't physically shove one in, which was happening in our former open top round trash cans, ironing boards too.
Okay, any other comments about the transfer from the general fund for garbage? Okay, thank you. Yes, Member Grace.
Just that, going forward with discussion about rates, well, I'm certainly going to be interested to know sort of like where the change came from, because the increase was not that long ago, and we felt that we were doing the best we could to calculate what the rates needed to be, but we did know that we were working on a really narrow margin, because we discussed various rate increase amounts when we went with the new contract. But I would like to see details, like especially if it's a loss of customers, things like that, just because I think it's important that we know why we need to make changes after a relatively short time on that fund.
Thank you, Member Grace. I absolutely agree. I'd like to hear from the code director myself. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The last item on finance and personnel tonight is a racial equity training. And I'm going to turn this over to the mayor here in just a second to get into the nitty-gritty because he's been working very hard on this. But this is from the National League of Cities, and the city has received a quote to do a race, equity, and leadership training for all city staff. And this is pretty extensive, but if the mayor wouldn't mind speaking to it a little bit more. Mayor?
I would love to. Thank you, Member Crowell. I don't have the actual details for all of the training, but I have been working on this for a long time, so I have committed some to memory. I've been working with the National League of Cities Race, Equity, and Leadership Council, which, by the way, I serve on that council for the National League of Cities. But with Ron Lucas, HR Director Ron Lucas and I, reached out roughly 6, almost 7 months ago to see what kinds of training the NLC's REAL program can do for the city of Athens. It was a rather long process to go through, but we agreed upon several items that are worth noting. One, there would be a city employee-wide survey, which will be, the data from that will be informative to REAL to where RIL can somewhat customize a for training platform. And that training would be the RIL 100, which I've been through before. I know some council members have also been through the NLC's RIL training. That would be for all city employees, followed a month or two later by the RIL 200 training, which is a higher level training of racial equity and systemic racism. And then all city staff, or all city leadership will go through, and council is invited as well, to go through the RIL 300 training, which is the highest level of the training that NLC provides. And then we will also have, 3, possibly 4 individuals going through RIL 400, which is a train the trainer product that NLC provides, which will be great, because then we will have individuals who will be able to continue that training as we move forward. There will also be a fair amount of data analysis coming from the National League of Cities RIL program when it comes to the survey and looking at areas that need to be targeted for specific training. Like I had mentioned, they do have the ability to customize the training modules to fit your community and the results of that survey. So this is a big movement. The RIL's quote, and I believe you have it in the ordinance, was approximately $101,000, $102,000. Since we are a member of an NLC city, we do receive a 10% discount. So while this is fairly expensive for the training, you can't put a price tag on the public health emergency that racism is. So again, I applaud Councilmember Grace for bringing forward the resolution declaring systemic racism as a public health emergency. And I would like to ask council tonight to honor that resolution and to bring that ordinance up when we do get to that point for one reading and suspend the rules to pass that, because we need to get moving on this training.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank Member Grace and all council members for moving this forward. As the mayor said, this is something that we would like to move on as quickly as possible. It has taken some time, as the mayor outlined. He's been in touch with the NLC for many months, but we were hoping to suspend the rules and approve this rather quickly later on this evening. Yes, President Isley.
Just a question about the detail on the cost proposal includes community conversations consulting. So is that what you referred to earlier, or are they going to be directing some community conversations or make recommendations based on the survey response? Or
They'll be consulting. They won't be coming to Athens, but they will be consulting with us, and as well as the Racial Equity Coalition here in Athens, to have community forums and open dialogue about systemic racism.
Okay.
And they will be using the survey data as well, because again, that'll better reflect the city of Athens.
Yes, Member Reisner.
Will this training be mandatory?
It will be mandatory.
Okay.
Member Grace.
Thank you, Member Crowell, and thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, having participated in some of the RIL training, it is invaluable. It's really well done, and I am proud of Athens for taking this step, and for requiring it of all our city employees. I think it's very valuable, and I appreciate the administration's work with NLC to develop this for the city, and wholeheartedly support moving forward with this, and look forward to participating in this, as many levels of the training as I am able to. Thank you.
Yes, Member Ziff.
Thank you, Member Crowell. I just wanted to echo Member Grace on that, to say how excited I am about this possibility, and how, especially with the idea of it being a mandatory thing for people who work here in the city. I think it's extremely important for people to garner a better understanding of systematic racism that we experience in this country. And this is just one small, excellent, not so small, one fairly large, excellent step that we can take here in the city of Athens to make it a better place for all of us. So thank you for everybody who's worked on this. This is a really, really awesome project.
Thank you, Member Ziff. Yeah, Member McCary.
Thank you. I also appreciate the speed with which we are trying to move this forward, because I recognize that there have been voices in the community that have been calling for this kind of action for some time, and I appreciate the point that there's some survey pieces to this that will help guide and customize the training. I'm wondering if the mayor or perhaps Councilmember Grace can speak to any kind of midway or post sort of experience survey that could let us know how employees are responding to this experience, and if there's any even noticeable or measurable change in implicit bias or anything like that.
That isn't part of this contract, but that's something that hopefully, I like that idea quite a bit. And I think that that's something that we can work with the Racial Equity Coalition to come up with a midpoint or end of training. I think midpoint would be the better way to go about that. I failed to mention this, and it's worth sharing with all of you and the viewing audience, is that the National League of Cities has indicated that the survey they have is they are encouraging the city to to either remove questions because we don't feel like they apply to the city of Athens, or to add questions that are missing. And I have spoken to the Racial Equity Coalition and asked that they be the individuals to look at that document along with myself and my staff to see, because I think to me it makes more sense to have the eyes of the Racial Equity Coalition looking at this document and making edits, whether it's, again, striking a question because it doesn't fit with our community, or adding questions that are missing. And the National League of Cities says that's absolutely fine. You can change the survey as you see fit, and they'll still compile that data and give us a report once that survey is completed by all city employees.
Thank you. And just one follow-up question about the timeline. Any sense of how long it would take to get all employees even through the just real 100 level?
It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
I can't give you an estimate as to how much time, but that's why I had indicated, the time between the real 100 and the real 200. Again, it's going to be, a month or two, possibly 3 months to get through that training. We're not going to hurry through the training, although I do want to get the city employees through as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you. I think I'll just end with one comment, and that is just about whatever we can do to encourage supervisors to provide time and space for this to happen. I'm assuming this is on the clock kind of training that's part of the job expectations?
It will be. Let me share real quick, and I apologize, Council, for taking as much time on this piece of legislation, but I think it's important. I'll give you an example, I guess, and that is that right now the police department is going through, I believe it's a 5-week training, and it's twice a week when they are meeting with faculty from Ohio University, going through, again, a history of systemic racism through the lens of law enforcement, the judicial system, the healthcare system, and I'm probably missing something there, certainly the history of systemic racism. And that too is going to take some time for them to go through that training, but they are all going through that training, which is vitally important as well. So it will take time to get everyone through, but
thank you.
It will happen.
Member Grace?
Thank you, Member Fox. And Mr. Mayor, for bringing up the history of racism. Of course, our APD officers as well as OUPD officers, they're all going through that class. And actually, I just met with the chiefs today and discussing that. And it's a fantastic class. I think I look forward to the day when that class can be offered to a wider audience. And I think it's really important, and I am so glad that we're going to do a survey of all city employees, and all city employees are going to participate in this, because I think that's one really important thing for us to remember, is that systemic racism is certainly not just about policing. And it is not just about individuals. It is truly about the entire systems upon which so much of our communities are built. And it's valuable to recognize that we're all a part of the system, and therefore we all need to learn and do better. And so I think it's really good for our police officers to be having this training that was provided just for them initially, so that they were the only ones in the space. But I think it's good for them to recognize, as well as everyone else, that this, we don't believe that this is only a problem in that division of our society, but that it crosses many, many boundaries, as you mentioned, whether in medicine, finance and banking and property. And so there's so many places where racism has changed how our society functions, that acknowledging that we're all a part of the system, therefore we all go through the same training together is really valuable. But they have completed 4 weeks of the history of racism course, and I think it's a really wonderful course for the law enforcement.
Thank you, Member Grace. So just to remind everyone, this is an appropriation from the general fund that we are recommending allowing the mayor to authorize entering into this agreement with National League of Cities in the amount of approximately $91,650. Any additional comments or questions about the racial equity training? Seeing none, thank you, President Isley. That ends Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Councilmember Crowell. We'll now move to City and Safety Services Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Grace and joined by Council Members Fall and McCary.
Thank you, President Isley, and welcome back to in-person. This realization that council was in council chambers tonight hit me over and over throughout the day. I was like, I have to remember to go to council. It's not just upstairs. But it is nice to see everyone in person. And we do have a few items on the agenda for this evening. The first item is a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant recipient. And council has to authorize our fire department to accept the grant that they have been awarded, which of course we certainly want to do. And my drive is not loading the ordinance, unfortunately. Do you have it? Thank you. So our fire department was awarded a grant for $15,790 to be used toward the direct purchase of 8 sets of water rescue gear. It includes rescue suits, PFDs, helmets, shoes, gloves, bags, and accessories. So this ordinance simply authorizes our fire department to accept the equipment that is being purchased with the grant funds. Are there any comments or questions related to that? I am always thrilled when our city departments are able to procure grant funding for whether for street projects or safety equipment for our fire department. And my next item on the agenda, if there are no questions about the grant funding, is Schaefer Street Storm Line Tunnel. As folks who live on the west side may have noticed, there's a bit of an issue on Schaefer Street, and this is actually a fairly significant issue in that it's going to be a costly repair. We have to repair the Stormline Tunnel and some of the sewer lines under there, and then of course repair the street back on top of the repair. So the ordinance for consideration today will be to transfer $400,000 to the sewer fund maintenance, and an additional $200,000 to the street fund. So the total estimate for repair on this project is a $600,000 cost for maintaining our vital infrastructure on that. And it's currently blocked off as there's a kind of a bit of a sinkhole in the middle of Schaefer Street. And this is from West State Street to Bayard, I believe, yes. Does anyone have questions on the, yes, Member Smedley?
Thank you, Member Grace. Is this an extension of the problem that happened on the corner of, what is that,
Schaefer and West State?
Yeah, right behind the Stumac building.
I wondered the same, and the mayor is nodding yes, because it's certainly not far down the line. And yeah, unfortunately, again, as individuals who spend some time on the west side, that was an ongoing problem at that intersection. And I believe this is an extension of that same problem that hopefully we know the extent of it now.
Yeah, the way it was explained to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's brick all in there underneath, and, you know, once that starts crumbling, that's a huge undertaking to replace. My question is, what sort of impact will it have to traffic, and what's the timeline for that?
I do not know the answers to those.
Yeah, it'll close at least one lane in one direction when they go do the work. And I don't have the timeline right now, talking to those guys. We need to do it this fall, or we need to do it rather quickly. You know, that's a WPA area tunnel down there that drains a significant portion of the west side of the city, and then goes down, and it's kind of screwy the way that it was aligned down there, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that there were railroad tracks there forever that went through, and so the way that it is designed at the lowest point is not how you would typically have built it, but it's just the way that it got built because there were railroad tracks there for 130 years, and that was like an impassable barrier. So it's quite the piece of infrastructure underneath the road in that area. It's pretty complicated. And then the potential for a major sinkhole is there with some of what my guys refer to as toad stranglers happening more frequently, the very intense rain events that could cause something to give way. You know, there's a few tunnels in the city that I lose sleep about. That's one of them. You know, another one, run underneath several buildings on Court Street. There's one that run under a couple houses on the west or the east side. They're very well made, but they're also old and at some point are gonna fail. This one has.
So my understanding is that we might want a suspension later in the process. Oh, we want a suspension tonight on this one. Okay. So this is something, to your question about timing, yes, with the potential for a sinkhole over there, we probably want to appropriate the funds to get this project moving.
I'd like to point out that this is part of the resiliency program that we've been doing with climate change and our emergency declaration of climate change. We will probably be looking at much more high frequency, high intensity rain events. So it may prove us to kind of think ahead and maybe look at a resiliency budget sort of thing in looking at the ones that keep you up at night, because I think that those sort of issues are going to be coming more and more, and we want to get ahead of them instead of behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fall. And I concur. Yes, Member Ziff?
Thank you, Member Grace. I just had one question, and it was, do we know, or is there even a way for us to know if this is isolated on that tunnel to that specific spot, or is there a possibility of that similar issue carrying on down that tunnel, or?
There is a possibility that there are other locations in the tunnel. This particular location, there's a more significant change in grade. We do have camera footage of where the bottom of the tunnel has come out, basically, and the water is traveling underneath it and coming back in further on down. So I think in this instance, it's isolated to that block. But that's not to say that it couldn't happen elsewhere. We just don't have any indication that it has at this point.
Thank you.
Can you put film on the website, on the city website? You talk about it, we have that camera, we spent money on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows?
We want to see what this tunnel
I
looks
don't
like.
There might be a whole contingent of people who are really into tunnels in Athens
As long as I
County.
can put the sanitary sewer camera on there too. I'll tell you what not to put down the toilet.
That's educational. Hey,
Yes, that's actually some valuable information.
yes, very.
Are there any further questions related to the storm tunnel on Schaefer? Seeing none, moving on to the final item on the agenda. This goes back to West Side again, and was mentioned earlier, some work to be done on 2 of the dugouts at the West State ball fields. And what I understand is that we need to address some drainage issues over there, as well as improving shade. And this has not gone out to bid, so the ordinance is to advertise and accept bids where necessary, and or possibly use our cooperative purchasing program for construction of dugouts for fields 1 and 2 at the West State ball fields, and for an expenditure of up to $65,000 for these dugouts. Yes, Member Fall.
When Westfield, all those fields got built, there wasn't a huge amount of communication, this was before you were mayor, with the city about what was going on down there, building-wise. There was a lot of concern that some of the building that happened is not floodplain proof. You know, having dugouts with fencing and stuff is not necessarily good for flow-through. So I would like to remind people that that is also not only our wellhead protection area and our single source aquifer, but it's also a large area of floodplain. And so looking at that, we need to make sure that the floodplain regulations and the process that we have as a city, we go through that so that we make sure that it remains a safe facility for the city, even when it's not being used in terms of flooding. So, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I hear what you're saying, Councilmember Fall. What we're looking at for the dugouts, for at least sunshade, would be cantilevered, those shade sails. And so they would not look like the dugouts that you see elsewhere within West State Street Park, where you have the cinder block walls all the way around. These would be open, so if there was a flood event, it's just going to flow right through and around it. So it really wouldn't be that dissimilar from what you see as the dugouts down there currently, other than making sure we're providing shade for our youth who are using those fields extensively during the summer. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions or comments related to dugouts for West State ball fields? Then that concludes committee for this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Grace. We'll move on now to Planning and Development Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Fall and joined by Councilmembers Grace, Smedley, and Reisner.
Welcome to everybody. Thank you. It's entertaining that one of the first things we talk about when we come back is what the people in Columbus are doing in order to make things that are not sustainable, not even more sustainable. This is a resolution. Right now there is a House Bill 282 and a Senate Bill 171 that are in conference committee, not conference committees, in committees in the House and the Senate in Columbus that will purport to make brine water from fracking processes a commodity. Brine water from fracking processes right now is a waste element from the process of fracking. It has all sorts of heavy metals, radiation, caustic materials. We don't know because it's a secret. The idea behind this is that as we go towards renewable energy and moving towards sustainability and getting towards net zero energy use, fracking and natural gas drilling is having a harder time making ends meet. One of the biggest problems they have is getting rid of the tremendous amounts of waste that they generate. Ohio is one of the chief importers of this toxic waste. Athens County is one of the chief importers in the state of Ohio. You see them every time you go over to Parkersburg, those horrible little tanker trucks that are going and injecting poisonous waste into our county. I will read the resolution in council, in the council meeting, because it will give it more heft. But basically, it says that we don't want it. It's dangerous. It's spraying brine that contains radiation onto city, not onto, mostly onto ODOT roads, perhaps others. It will be able to be sold at Lowe's or Maynard's for general use on sidewalks and front stores. And this is a dangerous precedent. So, thank you. Any questions?
I just want to say that I support this resolution 110%. House Bill 282 and Senate Bill 171 are absolutely the most asinine, stupidest, the amount of stupidity behind this proposed legislation is just mind-boggling. I can't really even conceive of it, how a brain could come up with something like this. I mean, it is so obviously wrong and bad. I've worked in the oil and gas industry as a young man. I've drilled oil wells, gas wells from Louisiana to offshore New Jersey. There's simply no safe way to dispose of this, of the waste that comes out of a oil gas well. It's I've given testimony in lawsuits about what happens when just a small stripper well that you see around the county has an accident and brine starts pouring out and it goes into a neighboring piece of property, and the damage that brine does to the land. The amount of salt alone, I mean, we're just talking salt. Table salt is what's in there, potassium or sodium chloride. It amounts to hundreds of thousands of parts per million of the amount of salt in there. I mean, it's completely toxic to all forms of life. And it damaged the property beyond repair. The only solution that poor person had was take the topsoil off and put down new. Yeah. Well, what do you do with the contaminated topsoil? Where does it go? I mean, it just snowballs. It just keeps going on and on. So now the idea is, well, we'll pass a law and we'll say that which is bad and unhealthy and poisonous is no longer bad, unhealthy, or poisonous, because we've made a law that says it isn't. And therefore, there's no problem. Now I can make money selling this stuff. I mean, why not? I've just passed a law that says it's fine. Everything's great. But it's not. I mean, passing a law saying the earth is flat doesn't make the earth flat. It's still round. Okay? Passing a law that says this is safe does not make it safe. It's still unsafe. And if something this stupid actually gets passed into law, which, knowing the state legislature, I have no doubt it will pass, I think we should look at ordinances before we're preempted. And they will. They'll get around to it. You can be sure of that. Where they'll say, oh, well, we don't want Athens County or Athens City to pass an ordinance to say that they can't sell that stuff within the city limits, we'll have to pass another law. But before they do that, we can do something, so. Anyway, sorry to get on a soapbox on this, but this just pisses me off. I'm sorry, it just does. I can't tolerate stupidity. I really can't. I'm not tolerant of it. I'm an intolerant person when it comes to things like this, especially when it's deliberate. And this is about as deliberate a stupid thing as you can get. Sorry.
No, thank you. Any other comments? Great,
I'd
thank
say
you.
Member Reisner covered it well. Thank
Yes,
you.
I think so. Thank you.
I needed a vent.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Zepp.
Thank you, Member Fall. I'm not going to fully echo everything that Member Reisner has already said, but thank you for being on your soapbox. I would encourage you to not apologize for being passionate about topics that have such a drastic and important impact on our society and on our town. So thank you for caring so much. I think that's wonderful. And on the note of salt, there's a reason that throughout history, if we look back at armies that have gone through and conquered lands, they would salt the earth. And it's because it destroys it. So, it'd be nice if we didn't do that to our own town. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's the end of my exciting
Okay.
first committee back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fall. All right, we'll go enter our regular business session. So if the council members and Law Director Eliason would join us,
Is there a copy of this that I can read from?
we'll go ahead and get started.
My computer is offline, so I should bring my own computer.
Okay, so we'll just keep it. Just scoot it over as far as.
No, it's fine, I can read it.
Okay.
That
good,
is
Thank you.
where the salt, or, below the salt. And
All right, welcome again. It's now 8:26, and we're going to enter our regular session of council. The first item of business being establishing a quorum, and all members of council are present. The next item of business is disposition of minutes, and these are for the regular session held on June 7th, special session June 14th, and regular session held on June 21st. If I could have a motion for approval, Councilmember Fall, a second from Councilmember Crowell for approval of these minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Next item of business is communications, and I have several to report out on. The first of which is a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, and this is for a Trex permit that exists for Athens Uncorked LLC, and from what we can tell, the title is changing to Athens Uncorked 21 LLC. And so we've received a notice about that from the Division of Liquor Control. Next item is to let council members, and they have been apprised of this, but also to enter for the record that the law director, the mayor, and myself as president of council have each received a letter from an Athens citizen, Mr. John Spaforth, and he has detailed for us the difficulty that he has encountered because of a runoff situation that he says has happened on his residence on Brown Avenue. And so his request is that we enter these, the letters that we have received into the minutes. And we will attach a copy of the minutes, or a copy of the letters that have been received. So thank you for that. The other item is that council members have received a year-end report from the auditor of the city of Athens. And just to much like we received our annual report from the law director, our auditor details for us some of the items that the staff from the auditor's office has been involved in over the years. And it's a wide variety of tasks, and I think we forget all the different things that the auditor's office does. So they take care of our loans, including our development loans for the wastewater treatment plant. They also have participated in an audit that is required, and that is, I think, just finishing up right now, and will hear about that at another meeting. They've also this year upgraded the finance, payroll, and tax software, no small task. And then in addition to that, processed business and residential accounts as well as withholding accounts. So thank you to the auditor's office and the staff for all the hard work you do day in, day out. And we don't often say it, but we know we're always calling you on the phone for information. So you're always on call and providing that, and we thank you. So I believe that those are the communications that I have. And are there any communications from other members of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason. No. Auditor Hecht.
I really just want to thank you for bringing up those year-end reports. And to just add a little bit to what we do, we manage a $51 million budget for the city. We pay out $3 million in medical claims for the city. There's just a lot of things that go on. A lot of that were in the reports from the different employees in my office. And it's just to let you know, those are our jobs, but I feel like we do a very important job for the city in managing the money, and we do it well. And thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Patterson.
I have several items, which is typical when council goes away on recess and then comes back. First, I want to start with what is clear to everyone, that the Service Safety Director has arrived back stateside safely. So I'm glad that you are back, Andy Stone. And also want to mention that Chief Tom Pyle has done a stellar job of serving as the acting Service Safety Director. So please, when you have a moment, to reach out to Chief Pyle, if you're so kind, to tell him thank you for all he has done over the past 18 months, give or take 18 months. The second thing, I'm sure the viewing audience may have noticed this, well, maybe not, sitting in front of me. We did receive an award from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and this is an award, an honor award for the Richland Avenue Bridge over Coates Run. So this is the bridge that is in the proximity of Stop and Cop drive-through, as well as the laundromat. So again, recognizing some of the detail work and the bridge design for this project. So just wanted to mention that to council. We are in a difficult time with COVID-19 and the Delta variant. And I've been in communication often with the Athens City County Health Department of late. Most notably was last weekend in talking with Dr. Dick Gaskell, whom informed me that we did have 5 new cases within a 24-hour period of time, to where we've not seen that in quite some time. Certainly we've seen higher case numbers come in on a daily basis than this. However, we have not had many positive cases at all prior to this number coming in. As he indicated to me, maybe once or twice every couple weeks there might be a case that comes in. The other thing to share with council is we received the data from our viral load sampling, which looks at the viral gene pairs that show up in our wastewater treatment plant. And that too, we were seeing extremely low numbers for many months because we had so few cases in Athens County, and most notably here in the city of Athens. However, we did receive data from the lab that indicated it had jumped up to over 100,000 pairs, which is alarming. Not going to sugarcoat this, because that viral load sampling, as council may recall, it gives us a 4 to 7 day window out as to what we could be expecting here in the city of Athens. Certainly it could have been due to increase in people being here during Ohio Brew Week. But now with these 5 cases showing up as of Sunday, I think the latency kind of lines itself up with now us having these 5 new cases and potentially more. I'm sharing that all with council because one of the things in my conversation with Dr. Dick Gaskell, and certainly tracking what the Center for Disease Controls is recommending at this point in time, and that is for people who are not only unvaccinated but also vaccinated individuals with this Delta variant, for them to be recommending that you wear face coverings, much like we are right now, when you are entering into businesses open to the public. Or what I will likely do, as a matter of fact, I will be doing, is start to require people coming into the city building to use utility billing, or coming to meet with myself or with Director Stone, going to be requiring face coverings. So all that said, this is something that I would certainly like to bring up in committee next week. So just giving you a preamble going into what I think we really need to do to keep our community safe.
I'd like to point out how important that grant we got for that monitoring of the viral load. People said to me it was a silly project. It's not. COVID is still around. There's going to be beyond Delta in variants, and people need to be safe and wear masks and socially distance again. Otherwise, we'll be here again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall. I would also like to share with council and the viewing audience tonight that on July 14th or thereabouts, Director Terry Moore of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation provided me with her resignation, wanting to retire and move on to something else. Council is also well aware that we saw or experienced a large number of our lifeguard staff at the city pool quit mid-season, which was atypical. In looking into things, it was found that there were some communication irregularities, and so therefore I have put Director Moore on paid administrative leave until the end of her tenure with the city, which is the 13th of August, which is when in her resignation letter. We do have, since he did such a great job serving as the acting, so there's a good place that you can see him is down at the community center. He will be going down and helping at the community center in the mornings. He will stop in and check in with our staff that is there, which will be of great assistance to our employees who work in the Department of Arts, Parks, and Recreation. And we will begin a search ASAP, since we do have a resignation, to where we'll be looking to find a new director for Arts, Parks, and Recreation.
I have a question, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So former City Safe Director Pyle, you said will be the interim director?
I did. I didn't mention his name.
Oh, okay. Okay. I know we all chuckled, so I made the assumption. And what I wanted to clarify and just assure people is what are staffing levels looking at other programs that involve health and safety? I know there was a shortage of lifeguards, not just in Athens, but my concern then reached beyond the pool when looking at Arts, Parks, and Rec programming. So are we, do we feel like we have adequate staff for other programs that would involve health and safety issues such as child care, child watch, and that sort of thing?
We do, but we have had to modify, so I'll just stick with the pool for right now, because that's, I think, what's the most forward-facing that people are seeing, is that we have had to modify the hours in which the pool is open. And so that's one way to at least accommodate the lifeguards that we do have on staff at this point in time. And just since we're on camera, I might as well throw this out there that we are still, if someone is interested in serving as a lifeguard for the city, we do have vacancies, looking for more lifeguards. So hopefully that helps.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. All right. Again, I have several items here to share with council. John Golsey. John has served steadfast and done a great job of serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals for 26 years, I believe. And he has stepped down. So I just want to give a big thank you to John Golsey. If, again, council, if you feel compelled, please reach out to John and thank him for his service. That's a long time to be serving on such an important board for the city of Athens. The Athens designated outdoor refreshment area went live last Thursday evening. The indicators that I have, or at least the intel that I've gathered from some of the bar owners in the uptown area said that things went smoothly, lightly attended, and I think that's largely because there wasn't a big push to inform the public that this was happening. But for the remainder of of August, or at least until the week before move-in, the DORA will still be active again on Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. The last two more items I want to share, but I also want to share with an ounce of in curbing your enthusiasm. But I did ask Paul Logue to kind of dust off the state cap budget request that we have tried twice in the past years to get the Armory into the capital budget for the state of Ohio, and were unsuccessful when we found out that U.S. Congress was looking at earmarks again for projects. Senator Sherrod Brown did open up the opportunity for people to apply or submit their request. And I just found out Friday that Senator Brown did deem the Armory something that he wanted to see move forward with a total of 46 programs that will now go before the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies to the amount of $2,363,000, which would be wonderful for the Armory. Again, any request like this that does move forward, it's likely that revenue would not be seen until sometime late in 2022. It still has a long journey in front of it, but I did want to at least announce that to council and anyone viewing that this was wonderful news to me. And I think council knows how long I've been working on the Armory and trying to find that secret sauce to get that project fully up and going, to even speaking about the possibility of using our American Rescue Plan dollars to help stimulate the Armory, which I may still do, council. The very last thing, and Director Stone wanted to speak to this, and that is the number of personnel hirings, vacancies that we currently have. Council is aware that we were doing the best that we could under the situation that we were under with the pandemic and having to really watch our budget closely. We find ourselves now at the point in which we do need to really work in earnest to start filling some of these positions. Director Stone?
Yeah, the good news is we saved a bunch of money during the pandemic, which is good given the potential shortfalls from the modifications to the state income tax collections, as well as a decrease in employees at Ohio University, which is our largest employer by a factor of 10, that really drives the income tax. But the bad news is I've worked in this city for 18 years, and I have never seen so many vacancies, both in number and in percentages of the authorized positions that this council has authorized on the books. So myself, along with the HR director and his assistant, are working very hard to move through the process and get folks hired and get people in to be able to extend the services that we need to extend to the citizens. What we are seeing from applicants is concerning, in that there just aren't the number of applicants that that historically have applied for positions with the city. And when I first started for the city, a job with the city was like gold, and people came and they never left. That just isn't the case today. There've been quite a few resignations. Like, people have just said, not because out of duress, but just said, "Nah, I'm gonna do something else," as well as just normal attrition that has occurred over time. And so I'm concerned. On one thing that we may be doing in the coming weeks is coming to probably the Finance and Personnel Committee with some modifications to particular authorized positions that we maybe just can't fill because the credential isn't out there, and maybe instead of having this many credentials that is slotted here, we'll go ahead and move that position here to match the to a different slot. So I'll try to do it all at once, so we're not independently coming with a bunch of different changes to the staffing ordinance over time. But I would appreciate help from this body when the time comes to be able to make those modifications, just so we can get some folks in the door and increase the level of services, because the staff that remain are absolutely doing double duty. So that's all I have to say about vacancies. Thank you.
President Nisley, that's all we have.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson and Director Stone, for being here tonight and for all the information. We have one ordinance for second reading. We do have then a number of ordinances for first reading, several of which we will be suspending tonight, as was indicated in some of the discussion. So the ordinance for second reading is 8621, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to provide initial funding for creating a remote work system for the city of Athens with Sunday Creek Horizons, a consulting firm. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall. And I'll pause for a moment. If no questions or comments, we'll move on to our ordinances for first reading. 8721 is an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street on Sunday, August 22nd, 2021 for Ohio University's Involvement Fair and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. We discussed this in committee about an hour ago. I don't think there's any need to reread the ordinance again, but the title says everything that needs to be said.
Thank you. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to 8821. This is an ordinance amending Ordinance 3721, authorizing the 2021 Street Paving and Repairs Project number 337, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, we discussed this about an hour ago. I read the ordinance, and at that time I see no reason to read it again, so I believe the title says everything we need.
Okay. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to 8921. This is an ordinance accepting a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation Critical Grant Award to the Athens City Fire Department, and this is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And much like Member Reisner said, we did just discuss this, and I'll just highlight that our fire department has been awarded a grant in the amount of $15,790, and we're proud of that effort.
Okay, thank you. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to 9021. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to accept bids where necessary and enter into contract for storm line, tunnel replacement, and street restoration between West State Street and Bayard, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second. And the reason being?
The reason being we need to authorize our Service Safety Director to move forward with this project as quickly as possible due to the extent of the damage and the risk for further damage.
Great, okay. A motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The rules are suspended, Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. Just briefly, I will read the pertinent sections of the ordinance. Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contract with the lowest and best bidder for storm line, tunnel replacement, and street restoration between West State and Bayard, which is project number 344. And Section 2, the 2021 Appropriation Ordinance 14020 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $400,000 to the sewer maintenance fund, which is Fund 750.636, transaction code 600 for transfer, and $200,000 to street fund 220, transaction code 500 for street restoration, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount.
Okay. And you're making a motion to
Yes,
approve?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this ordinance.
Second.
A second from Councilmember Fall. Okay, and we have the motion and second. Any additional comments or questions at this time? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 9121 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract for the construction of dugouts for fields number 1 and 2 at the West State Street Park, this is project number 341. And this is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. And again, we just discussed this among some of the other improvements planned for the West State Street Park. And the mayor indicated that these would not be concrete block dugouts, but rather sort of cantilevered shade. And I would love to see some renderings or projections of what this would look like. But this is to authorize $65,000 in expenditures for improvements to the dugouts for fields 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you. And ordinance 9221 is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of a dump truck for the Engineering and Public Works Department, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. And this goes back to discussion from much longer than an hour ago. Our Engineering and Public Works Department needs a new dump truck. And so the Service Safety Director, through this ordinance, is authorized to advertise and accept bids for the purchase of a dump truck, and that the appropriation ordinance would be amended to appropriate from the unappropriated balance the sum of $60,000 to the street fund, and is authorized to expend up to $70,747 for the purchase of the dump truck.
Okay, thank you. And I see we have a question, Councilmember Reisner.
What's the capacity of the dump truck? How
It's a
many
one-ton
tons?
dump for that price. I don't know the specific one, so I think they discussed it before I got back, but I think this is a one-ton dump.
Just one ton?
One of the four-wheel drive ones that we use, the smaller ones that do the snow and ice control in hills.
Yeah.
And then also in the summertime, we use it for asphalt and, stone and such.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if none, we'll move on to 9321. This is an ordinance amending the 2021 appropriation ordinance and authorizing the auditor to make interfund transfer. This is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. There are a number of items here that were just previously discussed, and then one that previously discussed as in an hour ago, and then another item that was discussed some time ago at council, and I'll go ahead and read section 1 here. The 2021 appropriation ordinance 140-20 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $150,000 to general fund for transfer, $400 to general fund treasurer for purchase of a scanner, $5,000 to recreation fund, $270 to plant trees at the West State Street Park and the Pocket Park in Oakmont off Carroll Road. And then finally, the last item, which was discussed previously at council and recently approved by the interim director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, is $8,000 to the Community Center Fund 271, which is the balance necessary for the purchase of an inflatable movie screen. Then this would be increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. This purchase of the inflatable movie screen is something that Arts, Parks, and Recreation has been working on for some time. Program specialist Aaron Helms has put this together, and as I said, is recently approved, and it's part of this appropriation. And then finally, just a transfer from the general fund to the garbage fund of that amount of $150,000. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, and I think this is the one, do we need to suspend this one tonight or not? Auditor Hecht is coming to the podium.
It would probably be nice. I guess my question is, maybe I missed something you said, Sam, but the $8,000 being appropriated, I didn't think we were appropriating money for this movie screen, but just to be clear, the cost will be split between the community center and recreation, and the total cost is about $15,000. So just wanted to clarify that. But yes, if council wouldn't mind, I think they need to, I don't know. It's up
So
to,
are you saying, you're recommending that the amount noted in here was 8,000 to the community center? You're saying that's part of a larger, is the language in this ordinance correct, or do we need to amend first?
well, I guess I don't know who asked that their 8,000 be appropriated. So maybe somebody else has looked at the budget and said, you need additional appropriation in community center? Is that the one that's?
Yes, Auditor Hecht, at our last meeting, I was also under the impression that the $15,000 was had already been appropriated. So my concern tonight, President Nisley, is that the $150,000 to the general fund for the garbage, we had asked for more information from Director Riggs on exactly the accounting there, and if we go ahead and do emergency passage of this entire appropriation ordinance now, that also goes through without any additional information.
So
But-
perhaps we wait then. Okay. It sounds like there's several
Yeah, I'm
indicators
fine with
saying, let's
that,
just get it
yeah.
clarified, and
Yeah.
and we'll wait. So thank you for that help.
Thanks.
And thanks, Councilmember Crowell, for your comments on that. Okay. We will move on to ordinance 9421. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the National League of Cities to design and implement race, equity, and leadership, otherwise known as REAL, training for all city staff. That's introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for 09421.
Second.
Thank you. Reason being is that we would like to get this going as soon as possible.
Okay. We have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 09421.
Second.
Thank you, Member Fall. We've discussed this at length tonight. I'll just go ahead and read Section 2. The 2021 Appropriation Ordinance 140-20 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $91,654 to general fund for REAL training. The mayor is further authorized to expend up to $91,654 from general fund for this said agreement. Thank you, President Nisley.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Do we have any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have a one-reading resolution, Resolution 1121, a resolution opposing the Ohio House Bill 282 and Senate Bill 171 pending in the General Assembly, entitled to enact Section 1509.228 of the revised code to establish conditions and requirements for the sale of brine from oil or gas operations as a commodity, and to exempt that commodity from requirements otherwise applicable to brine. Introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I just want to read the resolution. Whereas Ohio House Bill 282 and Senate Bill 171 propose to classify radioactive oil and gas brine as a, quote, commodity, unquote, and would authorize concentrations of up to 20,000 picocuries per liter of radium-226 and up to 2,500 picocuries per liter of radium-228 to be sold sprayed onto Ohio's public thoroughfares for de-icing and snow control. Whereas these concentrations of radium-228 and radium-226 are dangerous. The decay of Ra-226 to safe levels will take more than 11,000 years. Radium is very mobile in water and poses a threat to groundwater and could impact the city of Athens aquifer, which we've talked about several times this evening. Whereas RA 228 and RA 226 pose a public health threat because they can be misidentified by our bodies as calcium, and so would be deposited in bones and teeth. And radium also binds well to clay soils and could easily be inhaled into the lungs from dust particles once the brine has dried on the roads. And whereas Ohio Revised Code, Section 2927.24B1, states that no person shall, quote, knowingly place a poison, hazardous chemical, biological, or radioactive substance or other harmful substance in a spring, well, reservoir, or public water supply, if the person knows or has reason to know that the water may be ingested or used by another person. There are no exemptions for the commercial use of brine in this section. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Section 1, Athens City Council hereby opposes House Bill 282 and Senate Bill 171, pending in the General Assembly, to establish conditions and requirements for the sale of brine from oil and gas operations as a commodity, and to exempt that commodity from requirements otherwise applicable to brine. Section 2, Athens City Council expresses its concern for the welfare of Athens residents, as elevated levels of radium-226 and radium-228 could pervade water tables throughout Ohio, with the use of the brine from oil and gas extraction operations as a road de-icer and for snow control. Section 3, Athens City Council urges the Ohio General Assembly to give full consideration to the harmful effects the use of radium-226 and radium-228 has on Ohio's roadways and will have on our environment. Section 4, Athens City Council will recommend changes to the Athens City Code that will prohibit the use of radioactive oil and gas brine on city streets, parking lots, and sidewalks, and the city wellhead protection area to protect the health and safety of the citizens of Athens. I sent out 2 sections of code this afternoon to council. One is the wellhead protection plan, and the other is our natural resources, chapter 47, which does have some brine information and bans in it. Those will be reviewed by council and recommendations will come forward. And section 5, the clerk of council is hereby directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to all the usual suspects. I would like to say our senator, Mr. Hoagland, is a sponsor of this. He needs to be heard. He needs to hear the citizens of Athens saying what an incredibly stupid thing this is to do. And section 6, the resolution shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage. Thank you. I move that we adopt this resolution.
And we have a second. Okay, all right. Motion and second. Do we have any other comments or questions before we vote? Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you. I just wanted to, thank Member Fall for this, and I agree with Member Reisner's comments earlier. For any folks in Athens who worked on the Athens Community Bill of Rights, Richard McGinn, may he rest in peace, and all those other very hard workers, this is following on to that work, and they did our Title 97 under an initiative petition does include an unlawful area of using brine or other materials into any of the land, air, or waters within the city of Athens or its jurisdiction. So we will be building on that, or Member Fall, we were building on that, and I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your work. We now have announcements and other business. We will be having a committee meeting. We will be having committee meetings next week. And so committee chairs, if you can get we'll have needed information from city administration and to get the agenda items ready for our clerk of council, Debbie Walker, by Wednesday. We have need of passing several motions, one of which is the accepting the June 2021 financial reports. If I could have a motion? Second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second to accept these. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And then we have a motion for accepting the June 2021 credit card transactions.
Motion.
Okay,
Second.
second, all right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We now have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that are not covered on the agenda. And so of our remaining loyal persons in the audience, is there anyone wanting to speak tonight? Bless you. But we always want to offer that opportunity, and we always welcome folks to come and speak to us, and we have had very valuable comments in the past. So thank you, all the citizens of Athens. The next step that we're going to do is enter into executive session, and we do this, we've got a couple of new council members, and so we do it and it's not an odd way, but it's a way that Robert's Rules of Order and our law director have helped us establish the standards. So what we do is we make a motion and we do a roll call. And then we will pause for 5 minutes because I believe we have a member of the press here who may want to, just before we go into executive session, he might have some questions of council members. So we'll give him a few minutes to do that. And then when we're finished with that executive session, we come back out of it. We open the doors so that if anybody else is here and waiting and wants to come back in for our adjournment, then they can do so. And then we have a motion to adjourn after that. So if we could have a motion.
I move that we move into executive session for collective bargaining with all members of council present, the clerk, the law director, the auditor, surface safety director, Andy Stone, welcome back, and the mayor. Thank you.
Okay. And so I'll start the roll call vote, and we'll start in the end. Councilmember Smedley?
Aye.
Reisner?
Aye.
Crowell?
Aye.
Fall?
Aye.
Grace?
Aye.
Zip?
Aye.
And McCary?
Aye.
Okay. So it is 9:06, and why don't we say 9:11, we'll give you 5 minutes for the press to go ahead and ask fire away your questions at council members if you have any, and so you can come on up for those 5 minutes if you'd like to, sure. Thank you.